All right, guys, welcome to the December 14th Mac Forum video chat. This is your host, Sly Dude, again. Welcome to this evening's show. I hope you're going to enjoy it. Got a couple things on the agenda, nothing really earth-shaking. Not a whole lot going on this week that I spent a lot of time with. Want to be sure to take a look at a few things, though. First of all, as we normally do, let's take a look at. I'm going to be keeping one eye on the one eye on the forum and the chat, and probably a half an eye on the Cowboys-Eagles game. Got that being recorded on the DVR there. It was a weird day in football, to say the least, but that's okay. I'll be keeping one eye on them, but mainly be focusing in on the chat for this evening. One of the things that I want to be sure and mention real quickly, let's get our site stats out of the way. I believe Day is going to be joining us shortly. I hope so. He's planning to watch. So hopefully he'll be joining us. I want to try to keep an eye out for him. And let's go ahead and get the site statistics out of the way so we can move right on into the rest of our work here. First of all, let's just say that there are now a total of 282,159 threads, 1,550,807 posts, and those posts were made by a total of 287,116 members. Our newest member, as of a few minutes before the show time, was Hypercell. And I want to welcome them, as well as all the members that we've added recently to the chat. Hopefully some of them will be joining in. By the way, right now, as I'm speaking, I got one eye on the screen here, and I'm looking at Apple's current holiday commercial. You might have seen it has one person who finds an old 45 RPM recording, takes the recording, feeds it into their Mac, through a little digital trickery. What you end up with by the end of the commercial is a recording that's gone on to an iPod and been passed on to the person in the original recording. I like this commercial. Today was the first time that I had seen this commercial. I might have seen it before now, but it's the first time I really paid attention to it. One of the things that I like about this commercial is that it reminds me of one of the old, some of the old PowerBook commercials, when the PowerBook was the hottest machine that Apple had going. They used to do a series of commercials, the "What's on Your PowerBook" thing, where they had somebody, it would be people from different walks of life, students, senior citizens, you name it, talking about what they had on their Mac and some of the tasks that they were doing with them. And I I like those commercials. In part, now don't get me wrong, I like the other Apple commercials where they were picking on the PC guy, because some of them were funny. But I think the thing I've always liked about the Apple commercials, the PowerBook commercials, was it showed off what the Mac could do without ever running down the competition. And I think you've got to be able to, your options are, give somebody a reason to buy your product. Give somebody a positive reason to buy your product, or spend your time running down the competition. And running down the competition will work for a while. But I think at some point when people make buying decisions, they want to make that decision based on something positive. So if you can do a commercial which gives them the reason why they should buy your product, you're well ahead of the game. And I kind of like this this commercial. Could you do this on a PC? Sure, sure you could. One of the key things in there is that it looks like the person in the commercial is actually enjoying what they're doing. And I think that's a key thing. As they're making this digital trip down memory lane, so to speak, it looks like the person that's involved in it actually is enjoying what they're doing. And I think that's always a good approach to things, particularly at the holiday season when people are always looking for good cheer, so to speak, for lack of a better word. All right, we'll head into a couple of things that we had on the agenda for tonight. Not a whole lot in the way of tips and tricks this week. Just a reminder of one from last week. Those of you that prefer QuickTime 7 as an interface in terms of getting things done and making video conversions and editing and the like, QuickTime 7 still runs under Yosemite. I find, and I had forgotten that until I was helping someone with a question, and discovered that yes, it did indeed still run. If you look at the notes from last week's show, I have a link to that thread where it talks about where to get QuickTime 7 and a couple of tricks for how to use it to control playback speed. Give yourself another means of controlling playback speed. If you're playing something back, the user in question wanted to play back audiobooks at something a little bit faster than single speed. And the typically QuickTime skips forward. If you hit the forward button, will go from 1 times speed to twice speed, then to 4, and then to 8. You can get smaller increments by holding down the Option key, I believe it is, while you're doing this. But there are still some situations where some people prefer the method that was in QuickTime 7. So if you're one of those people that prefers that, check out the links in last week's show. It works well still, or at least seems to. I did a limited amount of testing with it last week, and it seems to work well. For this week, I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about a couple of, or well, not a couple, but a misconception that might be in place for Time Machine. There is a thread going in the forum, and I'll post the link at the end of the show, where someone asked about putting Time Machine back onto the drive. Their Time Machine backup is larger than the size of the drive. In other words, let's say you've got a total of 300 gigabyte in your Time Machine backup, and you've got say a 250 gigabyte drive. And apparently some people are thinking that this is that this means that things will not reinstall. That's not entirely accurate. What happens with Time Machine is this. Let's say that you are looking at Time Machine and you see that it says you've got a 300 gigabyte backup. That's the total size of your backup. That backup may In fact, it probably goes back several months. If the information that you're backing up currently fits on your 250 gigabyte drive, if you did a restore using your most recent backup, it would fit. Unless you've added things from several backups. But let's just say, just for sake of simplicity, that I have a backup in place. I need to restore from it, because the backup is backing up what's on my drive. It's going to fit. Now, if I start pulling multiple copies of files from previous backups and things like that, yeah, it will fill up. But if I'm just doing a restore from the most recent, then if that most recent backup is data from the drive that I'm backing up to, then it's gonna fit, assuming we're starting with clean space here. What's happening is, what's confusing people is the size of the backup is larger than the drive because it contains multiple backups. It's an incremental backup, and perhaps it's worth reviewing just a minute how Time Machine behaves itself. When you start Time Machine backing up your hard drive, what it's going to do is, the first time it's run, it's going to back up any of the contents on your drive, unless you've excluded something. In about an hour, it's going to run a second backup or another backup. And that time, what's going to happen is, it's not going to back up everything again. What it's going to do is, it's going to back up any changes that have been made to some of the files. So unchanged files is just going to create a link to the original in the first backup, but then the remainder of the files, those that got changed, will get backed up, and it'll keep doing that, adjusting that way, so that each backup, only the files that changed get rewritten. That's part of the reason that it takes so long. So that's part of the reason that things speed up, why it does not take very long. It's okay, looks like Dave is having a little bit of difficulty trying to connect. I'll see if we can get in touch with him and let him know. Okay, Dave, what I'm going to try to do here for you is put the link there in the main thread on the Google page, and we'll see. Also, we can try going through the link that's on the forum and see if you get it there. I just put the link up that way, Dave. Let's see, it should come up in just a second. We'll see if that gets you in this time. Looks like we're having a few technical difficulties getting Dave into the picture here today. Hopefully this will get him there. But anyway, I hope that clears up a little bit about what happens with Time Machine. It's backing up changes incrementally, files that occur incrementally. So in a, say, 100 gigabyte, 200 gigabyte backup, it's going to have multiple copies of files going back months. When you see that, you don't want to go in and, as one user thought would be a good idea, to go in and manually start deleting backups. That's not a good idea. Let Time Machine handle that. Just know that if what it's backing up is fitting on your drive now, and you say, for example, had to wipe the drive and do a complete restore, it would fit, because you would pick your most recent restore point and things would fit, or you would pick a restore point from, say, a couple of weeks ago and things would fit. So that hopefully will clear up a few things about how Time Machine behaves itself. I find the Time Machine, for me, has, for by and large, behaved reasonably well. It is not absolutely foolproof. It does goof up every once in a while. I've had Time Machine backups go twonky on me, but most programs will at one point or another have a hiccup. Those of you that have heard me discussing backups before know that I am a big fan of both Carbon Copy Cloner and SuperDuper, and I've used those in the past for cloning my hard drive. And both of those programs have excellent reputations among Mac Forum members, and yet I've had clones from them fail occasionally. Not necessarily their fault in the typical sense of the word. All kinds of things can go wrong in that process. The one time that I had a clone fail, I'm not sure what exactly caused the issue. Essentially, the Mac would would boot. I could boot from the clone. I could get to the login screen, and no matter what I put in as the password, I couldn't get any beyond that point, anywhere beyond that point. So what you're using as your backup method becomes important. And particularly when you're cloning your drive as a means of avoiding problems, go ahead and test that clone periodically. You don't want to be in the situation that I've been in before, where you need to boot off the clone, and that's when you discover that the clone isn't working. So if you're in the midst of cloning your machine, do test that clone periodically to make sure that it's working. And even with Time Machine, go in once in a great while and test the Time Machine backup. Restore 1 or 2 files. I know that's not the same as testing every file, but realistically, that's not a practical method anyway, given the thousands of files that can be in a Time Machine backup. Also keep in mind something else that I'll mention as far as Time Machine goes, because it is something that causes confusion. Beginning, I believe, with 10.7 Lion, Time Machine has included the ability to do what's known as local backups. That is to say, let's say that you're on a notebook, and one of the MacBook Airs, MacBook Pro, something of that nature, and you have your external drive identified as your iTunes backup. But now, all of a sudden, let's say you're not at home, and therefore you don't have access to that external drive, but it's time for a Time Machine backup. What Time Machine will do is store what's called a local snapshot. It essentially backs up any files that have been changed since the last backup, and it stores that backup on your internal drive. Now, if it continued to do that and just didn't stop, there were no checks on it, it would basically eat your drive to the point that there would be no space left available for use. But that's not what happens. Time Machine will continue to do local snapshots until you connect to your regular Time Machine backup drive, and then it starts offloading those backups onto your regular backup drive. And if at some point you haven't connected to your external drive in quite some time, Time Machine will go ahead and basically what it will do is, if space becomes at a premium and that space is needed for something else, then the backups stop. So basically what happens there is Time Machine cleans up after itself, essentially, and all is going well. And when you've got that situation in place, you can tell where the backups are stored. When you launch Time Machine and you go into restore mode and you hit that star field pattern and you start paging back through backups, the files that are stored on your backup drive are one color. The tick marks for that restore point are one color. And then the files that are stored internally on your internal drive, those tick marks are a different color, so that you know where they're restoring from. Just another general Time Machine tip. Many times our users will ask if it's possible to have Time Machine on the same drive as other data. Yes, it is, but it is generally not something that I recommend, not something a lot of our forum members recommend. Couple reasons. First of all, by having your data on the same drive as your backup, if you have a catastrophic drive failure, you've lost both your data and the backup. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of having Time Machine. The other thing is this. Initially, Time Machine and the other data will coexist fine. Time Machine will keep using space, and as it gets short on space, then it will delete older backups. And that's the way Time Machine normally behaves. But let's assume for a moment that you have a certain amount of data on your machine, and it's coexisting with Time Machine fine on that drive, and you load up some additional data, say several hundred megabyte or several gigabyte of data. And that may compromise your backup in the sense that now Time Machine has less space and may start saying to you, hey buddy, I'm gonna have to delete some of the older backups. And that may or may not happen earlier than you want it to. So as a general rule, it's a good idea to keep those backups a separate drive. Whether you use an external drive connected to your Mac or a network device such as a time capsule or hard drive attached to a router or hard drive attached to a time capsule, that nature. So those are just some general tips about Time Machine and how it behaves itself. And I'm looking and I see, looks like maybe Dave is still having a little bit of trouble getting in. Sorry about that, Dave. Hopefully you'll get it worked out before the show. I hope you got the link that I sent you via email. If you didn't, the link is on the show page. You can get there through there or through the link that's posted in the forum chat. Speaking of the forum, the other idea that I wanted to mention tonight in addition to Time Machine was, excuse me, messages on the Mac. As you know, now, with recent changes to system software and iOS and a few other things, we can now have a situation where a message that appears on our iPhone in the messaging app will pop up on the Mac. And we had a user asking about how do you stop that from happening. And why it is that these messages still pop up on the Mac even though uh, the message program is closed. Well, that is partly a function of the way Messages is built. Messages relies on a daemon. And just to try to explain this just in short sleeve terms, a daemon is really just a little piece of code that kind of runs in the background. You don't really see it. It's there running in the background. And its purpose is to do something when it's triggered by an event. So with the way the daemon behaves, you can have iMessage closed, and when a message pops up, it will open up. And I see it looks like Dave is trying to get in here. He made it. All right. You made it, Dave.
Hey, Sly.
Hey, how's it going?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, looks like you finally made it.
Well, I tried all sorts of links, and then your link into my email popped up, and I tried that, and it got me in.
All right. Hey, I don't have to be by myself today. This is, huh?
This can be a pain getting on this Google Hangout.
I know. I promise we didn't booby trap it, Dave.
Okay, I tried last week and just could not get in.
Yeah, we
How
kind
you
of
been?
we kind of missed each other last week. I'm not quite sure what happened there. One of the problems that I have on any given Sunday night is while the chat's going on, I've actually got a couple of tabs open in Safari, and I've got my little notes stuck here with little things that I wanted to be sure that I didn't forget, because if I don't write them down, I will forget. And then you've got the Google chat window open, and sometimes I don't necessarily see when somebody pops up on the show page and says, "Yo, I'm here, let me in," you know? But where
I understand.
Where I set up to do the show just isn't really conducive to running a dual monitor, you know, so you're kind of stuck. One of these days I'm going to do it the smart way, and I'm going to put some of those windows on the iPad. But of course that didn't occur to me until right before showtime, and I haven't charged the iPad, you know. And I've got to I need to get my iPad fixed because I've got a cracked screen. This is my second iPad and my second cracked screen. I'm not sure what's going on here. Somebody's trying to tell me I shouldn't have an iPad, I guess. I don't know.
I just got a new iPad.
All right.
In fact, lots been going on. I've updated both of our computers to Yosemite.
Okay.
So we're updated there, and all seem to have went well. And I bought my wife an iPhone 6, which she is enjoying.
All right.
And then I just a couple weeks ago replaced my old iPad 2 with an iPad Air 2, 64 gigabytes.
You know, Dave, Christmas is coming. If you'd like to put me on your Christmas list, I won't object at all. You're doing a good imitation of Santa Claus here, you know. Grow a little beard there, and you got it going.
Well, those are our Christmas presents, yeah.
How is your wife liking the 6 so far?
I wasn't sure if she would like it, but she's loving it. Every day she learns something new about it, and I'm sure. And I got her Pogue, you know, David Pogue. His new book just came out on the iPhone 6 Missing Manual. Just
great.
So we bought that through iBooks, and we have it both on our iPads, and so she's reading that, and I think she's loving that new phone.
Did you get the 6 or the 6 Plus?
We looked probably 3 or 4 times at both of those models, and I think she wanted the 6 regular one. She
Okay.
did not want the iPhone 5. We looked at that; it was too small. But the iPhone 6 is larger, and she has a mini iPad, and just thought the Plus was almost like her mini. So she's got the iPhone 6 standard size.
It's interesting that you say that because I read somewhere in the last couple of weeks a suggestion from someone that the 6, and particularly the 6 Plus, has reached a size that may be eating into the iPad mini market. In other words, for some people, the 6 Plus is big enough that they don't really need the mini. Or they're having to think, well, I don't really need both. Okay, do I want the mini or do I want the 6 Plus? You know?
Yes. Yeah.
My wife, for example, now she's still chugging along on an iPhone 3, got a 3GS. I keep threatening to put it behind the car so that it gets run over, but for her, she's kind of at the same dilemma because essentially, other than for making phone calls, the primary thing that she uses her iPhone for is as a Kindle reader. And she has my first generation iPad, which has the cracked screen. But for her, the 6 Plus would probably be just about the right size for book reading, as basically as an ebook reader. So we're seriously looking at how well that would work for her. I think it's a workable thing to use an iPhone 6 in place of, say, an iPad Mini, unless you and 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 the neat thing about that for her, if she was just shouting in my ear there to make sure I let you know this, one of the reasons that looks kind of attractive to us is that for her, something like the iPhone 6 would essentially replace 3 devices, because she's got the original first generation Kindle, which, second gen rather, and it's been acting up a little bit for quite some time now and doesn't get used very often because of that. The iPhone 3GS, which of course cannot run the current operating system at all, but that's okay. I mean, it does what she needs it to do. But then also, that would replace my first generation iPad for her. So you're looking at probably 1 device replacing 3. Now I probably will always have a use for having the iPad and the iPhone with me. But for what she does, something like the iPhone 6 works well because, like I say, you can replace. For her, she can replace 3 devices with that one thing. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. Whoa. Looks like we might have lost Dave there for a second. I'm not sure. I'm debating that. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we get Dave back. All right. Okay.
I think my internet went out, Sly, for a moment.
Yeah, just for a minute there, Dave.
So I ran in and checked it with Airport Utility, and it popped back. So I think that was the issue. Time Warner is a pain in the ass for me. I would say every other day I have to reset that modem.
Wow.
and
I've been having a lot of.
they won't come out and check it for me unless it's completely down. That's the irritating thing.
Okay. Yeah, I am convinced that no matter which cable provider you have for internet, Time Warner, Comcast, whomever it may be, you can find people who love them and people who hate them.
Yep, yep.
Much like cell phone companies. A couple of years ago, I was trying to figure out how to tether my Palm phone to my Mac. And as I'm searching the internet trying to figure out how to do this and what you have to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I go on to the Sprint site, and there's people saying, oh, I went to Sprint because I hate AT&T, and then I went over to the AT&T site to look something up, and I see people who say, oh, I came to AT&T because the Sprint people were horrible, and, the Verizon people were saying Sprint people were horrible, and AT&T people. Like, okay, could we just make up our minds, please, and the same seems to be true for internet providers. I mean, either because of cost or because of reliability. I know for us, I'm having a similar problem periodically, and I am not sure if it is the provider, something in my network, or if it is my time capsule starting to skits out occasionally. I'm not sure which of the three things is going on. I'm probably going to have to spend some time over the holiday trying to figure that out because it's very annoying when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what have you been up to besides enjoying retirement and playing Santa Claus, distributing electronics to people?
Yeah, we never finished that conversation on these machines because a new term's come out, as you probably know, called the phablet.
Right.
Between a phone and a tablet, and I agree with you and your wife's comments that the iPhone 6 Plus could certainly be a dual machine, being a phone and also a mini reader and serve other purposes. So, and I just did that with my new iPad too. I have an old iPod Touch with all my MP3 music on it, and I used to carry the iPod and the iPad 2 on the road, so I'd have my music and I'd have my iPad 2 for internet access, email. But now with this new machine, I bought the iPad Air with 64 gigabytes.
Right.
And I've got all my music on that. So I'm now just carrying one machine on the road to do my music and to do all my other features for the iPad. So I agree, it's nice to combine 2 or 3 machines into one.
We still have one of the old hard drive based iPods kicking around that we haven't used in a long time, and that's kind of what we use it for, is on the road, because my phone is not does not have that much space. And my current iPad is one of the smaller ones, capacity-wise. But I have to say, we're reaching a point now with iOS 8 where you need at least, I don't even think you can get an iPhone 6 with 8 gigabyte, can you anymore? I think they're starting at 16 now.
The iPhone 6 that we bought, your only options were 16 gigs, then they skipped 32 and went to 64, and then you've got 128. So you're stuck with that 16 versus 64. So I bought Susan the 64 gigabyte one because I put some music on it, and our new car has Bluetooth on the radio system, so we can get in the car, go on a trip, and just Bluetooth her iPhone to the
radio.
car stereo and listen to the music we want. So,
There you go.
and I'll probably put some more music on.
Is most of your music, I know you're kind of a classic music buff, classical stuff. Is it mostly stored as MP3s, or what have you used primarily?
My musical tastes are very eclectic. I would say 2/3 of what I own is classical music,
Mm-hmm.
which is about 4,000 CDs at the moment.
Right.
And I've got probably 2,000 more CDs of blues, jazz, popular music, and other kinds of
I'm
genres.
gonna come knock on your door one of these days, Dave.
I've got nearly 6,000 CDs, Sly, that I could rip any time. But no, I've probably got a couple hundred hours of MP3 things that mainly I've ripped, a few that I've bought, but it's mainly ripped music that's on the iDevices. So
The reason I ask
on
is
her phone, I have to put a very eclectic mixture because we don't have the same taste.
right.
So I have a little classical. She likes Broadway musicals and popular singers. So I have a lot of that, and we're also into. We grew up in the '60s, so I've got James Taylor, Simon and Garfunkel, and people like that from that era. So it's a mixture.
sounds like some of our road trips. You never can tell what, with the exception of the fact that we almost always start off the road trip with Steppenwolf's "Born to Be Wild."
Okay.
After that, all bets are off as to what you find on the thing. But that seems to be something of a tradition, is starting off a road trip with that. I have most of our stuff ripped into MP3s.
Okay.
And a couple of, mainly for compatibility, so I could, if I needed to, I wouldn't have to play it back in iTunes and things like that. But every once in a while, I'll read a post online from somebody that says, "Oh, if you used Apple lossless, the fidelity would be better. I'm not sure you could hear the difference given the equipment that I'm listening to it on. Not that it's bad equipment, but I have my doubts. There are a lot of people who say, "Oh, I can always hear the difference between an MP3 and the original file," and I realize there probably are some people who can, but I kind of have my doubts whether most people can hear the difference, Dave. I've never done a blind test myself to see, but there are times when, and I suspect that it's more noticeable with certain types of music than others. Some of your classical material, for example, the dynamic range on that is so wide that if you did it as an MP3 and you weren't careful in selecting bit rate and things like that, you could compress it too much and it just wouldn't sound right. But I'm not sure most people can hear the difference. I've seen that post before on various forums where somebody will say, "Oh, I can always hear the difference between an MP3 and a Apple lossless versus, say, a WAV file which is uncompressed." And I'm just not sure that most people can hear the difference.
Now, there have been a lot of A/B sound comparison things that you can Google on the web that show that once MP3 that you get much above 192 or 256 megabits per second bit rates, that you really can't tell the difference.
See, that's what I thought.
Regardless of what stereo system you're even hearing it on. So people that state that with high bit rate MP3s are pretty much lying to you, I believe.
I've got some MP3s that are 256s.
Yeah. Most of mine are 192 or 256 is what I rip at.
Right. I've got a few 128s still in the system from the original, the first time I ripped them. And I just haven't, when 190, when that was basically it. Nobody was doing the higher bit rates because of the space constraints. And I just haven't gone back and re-ripped those because it's generally not material that I listen to regularly.
Uh-huh.
Things that I listen to regularly, I will pop up and do, like you said, at either 192 or 256 and go from there. I see in the that one audio thread that you've chimed in on a couple of times where the one user was looking for how to connect his stereo to his Mac. There seems to be a lot of confusion in that thread.
Well, the OP had a British stereo system with DIN connectors, DIN,
right,
which I'm not familiar with, but there were also above, I put a picture of the back of that system he has, there were some RCA connectors.
Right.
So I wasn't sure if he could just use the mini stereo from the Mac and plug it into the RCA connectors rather than the DIN connectors. So I've never used DIN connectors, so I can't really comment on that. But
I haven't on stereo equipment. I've used DIN connectors on other things, connecting other peripherals, particularly in the early days of Macs. But you can, what you can do, and somebody did, I think, finally point this out. He should be able to use the kind of RCA cable that you were talking about. If those RCA plugs on the back of the stereo are not phono plugs, like for a turntable.
Yeah, I assume they were just aux plugs. Like, I have on my NAD receiver an aux plug thing to a mini stereo that I would plug my iPod or my iPad into and just play my music over my stereo. So
right, exactly.
I assume they were not phono plugs. I understand phono plugs very well. I used to deal with that all the time. So
yeah, I figured when I saw somebody pointing that out in the thread, what went through my head is the OP may not know that, and I should have mentioned it because I knew it. The OP may not know that, but Dave, I bet, knows that.
Oh, I chuckled a little bit at that response. Yeah, I'm well aware of that difference.
It's one of the things that now the Toslink connector that they were talking about in that thread. If he happens to have a Mac that uses the Toslink connection, with the right cable, you can do the same thing. You can go from Toslink to an RCA set of RCA plugs. I haven't bothered to get one of those, mainly because with the Apple TV, I don't have to have my my computer within arm's reach of the stereo to make everything work anymore. What I had, which I actually liked until the machine died, I had 2006 era Mac Pro, and it's got the optical connectors. So I had it running to the stereo by an optical connection, and just bypassed that mini jack altogether. and that worked really well until that machine died. And it's sad because I to this day I kind of miss that machine. I mean, it can't run Yosemite and all of that stuff, but to this day I kind of miss that machine. It's kind of like having to kick one of your kids out of the house, you know, because it was getting a little slow. But what I would do with that machine is let it grind out tasks that I didn't want to tie up my laptop with. So if I was doing, you know, like you mentioned, some of these public domain movies, you know, if I was grabbing one of those or something like that, I'd let that sit. Or if I was ripping a bunch of CDs, I'd let that, you know, go on in the background, or go to burn a DVD for somebody, and you got to let Toast encode video. Well, you turn that thing on before you go to bed at night. You just let it go the rest of the night, you know. I did make one small mistake one night that sort of puzzled the wife, though. And because that machine running, and normally I do all that grinding work out of I just had a limited account that was up doing all kinds of media stuff, but that particular day I had been logged into my regular account on that machine, and I had iChat, which is the precursor to Messages, open. And because I frequently had that message window hidden out of the way, I had it rigged so that when somebody sent me a message, a chat request, it would say, you know, it might come on and say, Dave Ott is available, or whatever I had set the phrase to be, right? And so I forgot to shut that program off one night, and here I go off and go to sleep, and I'm sound asleep, and I didn't hear anything. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, one of my buddies came on. He's out in Southern California, out in California. He came on about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was doing something on his machine, so for some reason he would come on, pop up in the chat window because he was online, and then drop off almost immediately. And like 5 minutes later, it would pop back up again, right? So about every 5 minutes, for about 15, 20 minutes, you would get, so-and-so is now available. So-and-so is now available. Of course, I didn't hear a thing, and she had no clue how to shut this down to stop it at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was a little weird. Her response was the next morning she thought there was somebody in the house. I'm like, no.
Just pull the plug from the wall.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not. You know.
Turn off your UPS.
There you go. There you go. I had the other one that I had that really kind of annoyed her to no end is the startup sound that was like a bomb blast going off, and especially since she didn't know that one was on the computer, which is why she has said that no matter what kind of computer she owns, we have to have separate computers, because I'm always tinkering with them and putting stuff on them, and I like forget to tell her that they're there. And then she goes to run the computer, and the bomb blast one was back in the day when machines just weren't practical to have multiple accounts set up because of the hard drive space and everything. And so, I mean, you're talking about probably early days of OS 8. And I had this one thing on there that made what it did is partway through the startup process, you would hear boom! And the Mac that it was on is one of these old desktop machines that had the subwoofer in the bottom of it. And the software would jack the volume up right before that little explosion occurred. And what's worse is I had put that on there the night before and thought it didn't work. So I didn't bother to remove it. I thought, okay, I'll remove it tomorrow when I'm awake. Well, what I didn't realize is that in order for it to work, you had to actually reboot the system. And when you did, that's when it jacked the volume up to, top
Oh.
volume and just did the. Needless to say, I was in the doghouse for a couple days over that one.
Yeah, years ago we were on PCs, and I was playing around with them, and we used to turn our computers off and reboot them every day. I don't do that now,
Right.
but back in those days, I put a message on that said, "Hello, this is Dave. Get to work." So my wife would come in the morning, reboot the PC, and that message would appear. And can you turn that damn thing off? And I waited about a week, and I finally deleted it. This is Dave. Get to work.
Oh, I bet she was thrilled with you. That's pretty good. I had Apple used to include as part of their speakable items demo. They have the speakable items situation where you could say something to the Mac and then it would go off and do it. Basically,
Yeah.
the speech would trigger an Apple script that would then go off and do whatever you told it to do. Well, to demonstrate speakable items, what Apple had done is they had this little thing called "Tell Me a Joke." There was a little script called "Tell Me a Joke," and you would run this, and it would tell you a knock knock joke, and it would literally say knock knock, and you would say who's there, and it would proceed with the knock knock joke. Well, one day I had never played around with speakable items, and I was getting ready to write an article for ATPM, for the online magazine I used to write for. And I decided, hey, I'm going to write something about speakable items and what you can do with it. And since I hadn't played around with it before, I saw this thing in there that says, "Tell me a joke." So she goes off to the store, and I'm in the office area playing around on the Mac trying to get speakable items to work. And at that time, it was an iffy proposition for me anyway. Some people had no problem with it, but I seemed to have a little bit of an issue where sometimes it recognized my voice immediately, and sometimes it didn't. And so she's coming through the door with an armload of groceries, and the machine is saying, "Knock, knock," and I'm screaming into the microphone, "Who's there?" And the machine still doesn't understand me, so I'm saying, "Who's there?" again. And she doesn't know what I'm doing, so she thinks I've gone completely nuts because she keeps saying, "It's me," and I didn't hear her saying, "It's me," because I'm trying to say, "Who's there?" to the computer. Let's just say it was a long time before I tried speakable items again,
Kind of like those people that walk down the aisles at grocery stores with Bluetooth headphones on, and they're talking out loud, and you wonder,
Right.
who the hell are they talking to? Is this the right item, honey?
You would be amazed how many times I've been walking down a hallway or an aisle somewhere, and I live in an area where people still have a habit of saying hello to each other, even if it's somebody that they don't necessarily know. And
Yeah.
so you will be walking down an aisle, and somebody will say something, and you think they're talking to you, so you say good morning, and then and those Bluetooth headsets now have gotten so small,
Yeah.
a lot of times you don't notice that they're talking to somebody,
No,
and then the
no.
next thing you know, I refuse to become a cyborg, by the way, and walk around with one of those things in my ear 24/7. I'm not going to be assimilated, by the way. Sorry, no. As much time as I spend with technology, you would think I would enjoy that, but no. Oh, speaking of messages, the Craig posted something. This was the other thing, the only other tip I was going to mention tonight, unless you have something in mind. Craig posted something. Someone was asking about messages, and like I said, messages running that background daemon that that answers when you get a call. For example, it knows that you've got an incoming call, even though message is turned off.
Mm-hmm.
And Craig happened to point out that the way that's set up with that background daemon running, if you don't want those calls to appear on your Mac and disturb what you're doing, then about the only way you're going to solve that is by going into the preferences for messaging and turning and deactivating whatever account those are coming in from until you're ready to hear them again. There really isn't a good method other than that for silencing them, because if I'm not mistaken, that daemon, if you go into Activity Monitor and kill it, I think it's just going to respawn itself. Most of those background processes are there to check to see if you want something done, like notifications and things like that. So if you kill it, it just respawns itself so that it can monitor what you're doing and try to make sure you don't need some assistance.
Yeah. I don't use that much, so I try to avoid it.
I don't get a lot of messages. I do now, but I'll tell you one thing that I enjoy about it, though. One of my cousins, rather than call by phone, will frequently send a message. Hi, how you doing? Happy birthday, whatever it happens to be, and we'll go back and forth with text messages. And for a while there, because she was using something other than an iPhone, if I was at my computer, I didn't always hear the message because my phone might be in another room, or I've got the ringer turned down and I didn't hear the little beep that tells me I've got an incoming message. And the other day I'm sitting at the computer and I noticed that all of a sudden I'm starting to get her messages on my Mac. I'm like, wait a minute, what the heck is happening here? Why is this happening? Well, unbeknownst to me, she had picked up herself an iPhone, kind of as an early Christmas present, and because all of her contact information was already in my Mac, when she sent the message pops up on my computer and on my phone, which I kind of like, because if I'm at home and working at the computer, I much prefer typing a message back on the keyboard as opposed to using the keyboard on the phone or on the iPad.
Okay.
Even though I like the keyboard on the iPhone, I'm not nearly as fast with it as I am with a full keyboard. And I'm dog slow with a full keyboard, so that tells you how horrible I am when it comes to text.
No, when I hate those on-screen keyboards, and when we travel, we only take our iPads now, and now Susan's iPhone. But I always have a Bluetooth keyboard with me to answer emails and things like that. I just can't stand typing on that on-screen keyboard. And when I'm on the forums, I'm always on my MacBook Pro. But so I don't like them either. But I'm pretty good on a keyboard. I was in high school in typing class. I was #1 in speed, so I still have.
You just had to rub that in, didn't you? Listen, when I must have been junior high age the first time I took typing, and I was outpaced by a kid who basically typed with 3 fingers. Okay, I mean,
sounds like my son. That's how he learned to type.
Have you tried using some of the voice recognition stuff to dictate the text and emails and stuff?
Well, I'm playing with that now because I'm reading that David Pogue book on the iPhone, so I know how to use my wife's iPhone.
Right.
And he just had a long chapter on that. I scanned it, but it's pretty damn amazing
Yeah.
what you can do with that.
I
But
tried.
I haven't done much with it.
My old iPad will not run Siri, nor will my iPhone. But my other iPad, the newer one, has Siri on it. And one day, just for the heck of it, I was kind of playing around with Siri, and I needed to enter some reminders into calendar for a couple of meetings that were coming up, right? And
Yeah.
okay, this would be a good time to experiment with Siri, and I push a button, hold it down, Siri comes up, and I start telling it, when the meeting is, and where, and the date, all of that. And the first one goes in fine. The second one, I don't care how many times I shouted at Siri, I don't care how many times I coaxed and cajoled and whatever, it would not go in. I mean, just absolutely would not go in. And so I just manually put it into the iPad. And I kept thinking, okay, this first one worked. What went wrong? Later that day, I realized what had happened. I don't even remember the date, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say that the meeting was December 20th, 2014. Okay?
Okay.
I had said when I go to create the calendar event, December 20th, 2013. Siri was smart enough to know that that date has already passed, and there's no way that I needed to do a calendar entry for something that had already passed for a year. And I mean, I literally sat there for like 10 minutes that day trying to figure out why in the world I couldn't put this date in the calendar, and that's what it was. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So just for kicks and grins, I took the manually created date out, the one that was given a problem. I had to create it manually. I put that out and did Siri again, and I put in the right date, and lo and behold, it went in the first time. I'm like, you, sir, are an idiot. The machines are smarter than we are, Dave. This is not good.
I don't know if that's true, but yeah, I've been playing with Siri on my new iPad, and it's pretty amazing what you can do with it.
Yeah, yeah. It's something that's always kind of. It's amazing to me how much the voice recognition technology has improved. Um,
It's real. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I played around with it a little bit when there was a Macintosh program called Via Voice, which would run on like the older like G3 machines, and I was never real happy with it, both in terms of accuracy or speed. And then the Nuance came out with Dictate for the Mac, which is still, I think, in some ways, it's, from what some of my friends have been telling me, it's close to the accuracy that you get with natural speaking. Some people have a little bit better accuracy than others, but you're finally, I think, now getting to the point where, and of course now Apple's rolled some dictation ability directly into the OS, which I think is a good thing because you can kind of test it without spending a ton of money on an application that you may or may not use.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't use the dictation very much when I'm in the computer room because it drives my wife nuts. The talking to the computer, especially when I go to make a correction, because there's still some words that, for whatever reason, it just doesn't recognize very well for me. And when the one that really takes for some getting used to is having to speak the punctuation. When you blah blah blah, comma, that kind of thing. That takes a little
Yes.
getting used to because you kind
Oh
of wonder,
yeah.
what's
Yeah.
going on here, I think that
Well,
it's probably coming where you have to do less of that, you know.
yeah, when I was still working in radiology, I've been retired 3 years, but so this goes back 6 to 8 years. We were just getting into voice recognition dictation systems in radiology, and
Uh-huh.
the first one, and these would be multi hundreds of thousands of dollars systems.
Right.
But the first ones really drove us nuts. But 6 or 7 years ago, we got one that just worked fine for me, and it would learn your voice,
Right.
learn your accents, and
Right.
it was.
It's like all of a
I
sudden
had
it was
no
a
problem with it.
quantum leap,
That was 6 years ago.
Well, I tell you,
Yeah.
we're a long way from. I know our younger listeners won't remember this, but I'm sure you've seen them. The old Dictabelt dictation machine things.
Yes.
I can remember going in to see my orthopedist in the late '60s, early '70s, and him dictating case notes into one of those old Dictabelt machines. And I look at those things now, it's like looking at something from the Stone Age. You
Oh,
know?
Sly, I went through all those dictation systems from the 71 until I retired. I mean, I dictated directly to secretaries that were typing on typewriters.
Right? Yeah. Mhm.
And for a long time, we had the cassette tape dictations where people would come and pick up your cassette and take it back and transcribe it from cassettes. God, and then we went online, and then finally we got to this self-dictation system and voice recognition that worked well by the time I retired. So
Right.
I've seen it all. In fact, when I was in the Army for 2 years, we hand-writ reports. So I was even involved in doing that.
So I mean, you really have kind of seen the
I've,
whole
I've,
collection of stuff.
I've gone through it all.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like I say, it constantly amazes me how much some of these things really kind of are just now getting to a point where they can be really widely used.
Yep.
Um, One of the things that I want to test now, even though the manufacturer says it doesn't quite work so well with teenagers, I want to really challenge one of those dictation programs and see what it does with people who have, say, an articulation impairment. But if their speech pattern is consistent, then that program should be able to kind of adapt and recognize their voice as long as the pattern is consistent, you know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the reason I say that is I have a friend that I went to grade school with who, because of cerebral palsy, he has some speech issues, and typing is difficult for him.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's using right now is some word prediction software that as he starts typing, it's similar to the stuff that's used on the iPhone, the autocorrect features. Similar,
Predictive.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
predictive text. But he's always kind of looking around for uh, alternatives. And he actually, even with the speech issues, prefers talking to people, even though it's slower and that. In some ways, he prefers talking to people as opposed to typing.
Okay.
So, every once in a while, I'll go back and try some of these things and say, okay, what will this work? And it's been a while since I played around with it to see how good it would do with that kind of situation.
Yeah, before I retired, the last voice dictation system we used, to start with, you had to kind of dictate something, a standard set of statements for like 2 minutes, and it
Right,
would kind of learn your voice. So,
right,
because in my department we had people from India and from British Isles and places like that, so it was able to kind of learn accents and things
right.
like that.
And I know I don't have the current version of Dictate. I have the one immediately before. I haven't upgraded yet because since I'm not using it that much right now, I just don't see paying for the upgrade. But what it did the same thing. A couple of passages that you read aloud to basically train it to your voice,
Yes, yes.
and that actually worked quite well. I find that that process is not nearly as cumbersome as it used to be. I'm getting the same accuracy after one or two short passages that I was getting before with different programs after 6 or 7. I'm starting now with the level of accuracy that I ended up with before on some of these older programs.
Okay.
And the other thing that I think makes a difference sometimes is the caliber of the microphone. Uh, I can do okay using just the internal mic on my MacBook Pro, assuming there's not a lot of external noise. But it really does much better if you've got a decent headset mic. You
Yeah.
I haven't tried it with the really expensive ones, but some of the Logitech ones, and some of the others that are in the $40 to $50 range, seem to work reasonably well for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other people have told me that, well, the more expensive microphones do better, but my budget doesn't want me to conduct that little scientific experiment yet. Yeah,
Budgets are important.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much this electronic gear varies.
Yeah, it really is.
Like I carry a Bluetooth portable speaker on the road to play from my iPad and my iPod in the past, and but I won't spend much more than $100 on these things because I've left 2 behind already in hotel rooms.
Which
Do
one
you
are you
want
using?
you want a $600 Bose Bluetooth that you're going to leave behind in a hotel?
Oh man, I gotta tell you, I would, and it's interesting that you mentioned Bose. Not so much that they're the only ones that have been, but it seems like every version of the audio gear that was a big deal when you and I were growing up has gone through phases where their gear just does not seem to be as good as what it was.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's just wishful thinking. I don't know if it's if it's just that it's worse. But I know I'm not the only one to have noticed that gear that used to be really, really good, and now people will say, "Oh, I won't buy them. Their gear is not that good anymore." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and that's happened to a lot of different manufacturers. I listened to several years ago, listened to a set of Sony speakers that when I heard them, I'm like, "Wait a minute, these should sound better." And I realized these were not, top of the line Sony speakers, but
Mm-hmm.
we're at a point now where even $200 speakers should sound decent.
Good. Yeah.
I understand that there's a certain amount of truth to you get what you pay for. And the really good speakers are going to sound better if they're well built. I get that. But when I listen to a set of speakers and they don't sound any better than something that costs half the money, then I start to wonder, okay, am I paying for somebody's name here?
Yep. Yep.
You know, so it's just, that's one of those things that kind of sticks in my head for one of the things to kind of look out for. And of course, like most people, you know, I go into an electronics place and I'm distracted by all the bright shinies, you know, and the wife has to kind of drag me out of there.
Value's very important, yeah.
We used to, what used to happen is she would wander around the store looking for me. And then after we had been married for a year or two, she realized that it was pointless to go wandering around the store looking for me. Just go to where the electronic gear was. That was probably where I was going to be. And then as we started using our cell phones more and more, and each had our own phones, now it's a matter of, okay, did you bring your phone? Because what she'll do then is send me a text that will say, where are you? You know, and fortunately, most of the time I actually notice and say, okay, here's where I am. But it still boils down to the same thing. 99% of the time, I'm hiding over in the electronics section, checking out what they, you know, what they've added and what they've left out.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I visited our son maybe a year or so ago, and my wife and daughter-in-law went to some knitting thing, and my son took me to a Fry's store.
Okay, yeah.
In Indianapolis, and it was just gigantic. It was like 2 Walmarts put together, and it was just had all these electronic stuff. And God, we were there for 3 hours.
But by the way,
I did not buy much, but just it was like a kid in Toys R Us.
There you go. There you go. You know, hey, by the way, you mentioned your wife and knitting. Has she acquired the ability yet to just kind of magically find knitting stores?
I'm not sure. She doesn't do it as much as she used to.
I kid you not. We're
in Winston-Salem, and there are a few here.
Oh,
but there's some big ones in Indianapolis.
Right.
And,
we were traveling several years ago to visit a friend of ours who at the time was in Abilene, and she had given us directions how to come into Abilene, which we knew. And she said she had given us directions to how to get to her house. And we had a little issue following the directions, mainly because I was giving directions, and that just didn't work very well. Well, we pull into a shopping center to call her and tell, you know, orient ourselves and tell her where we are so she can give us a new set of directions, right?
Okay.
And we're sitting there, and I've got her on the phone, and we look up, and my wife looks up, and right across the parking lot from where we're sitting is a knitting store. Okay? We're in another city one day, and we go into this place, and there's a Michael's or a Ben Franklin craft store.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We go somewhere else, and it's a sewing store. You know, so I don't know how she does this. I don't know if there's some sort of secret meeting the night before where everybody gets directions except me, or what it is. I heard about a store once that what they did is they put a TV in the back of the store for the husbands to watch the football games on Saturday while the wives were you know, looking up different things in the store.
Yeah.
And I understand that because I'm convinced they pumped something into the store to put me to sleep. Because 15 minutes after I enter the sewing store, and look at about the fourth bolt of fabric, my brain starts to shut down. Now, we were looking for stuff for her to make shirts for me, but that was irrelevant. After about 15 minutes, my brain just kind of started to go into snooze mode, you know? You know, I have no idea how she finds these places without a map or a compass or anything like that. It's just, they kind of materialize out of thin air in the parking lot, you know?
They're all the same. It's like women's clothes stores. The first time I walk in, I look for a chair to sit down and hope there's an interesting magazine.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, well, see, that's the advantage of the iPad now. You got your interesting magazines with you. See?
Right, you're right. I need to take my. In fact, I took my our old car in to get serviced after 60,000 miles, and I decided I'm going to sit there for 3 hours. So I just read books on the iPad
There you
and
go.
listened to music at the same time.
There you
So
go.
that was nice.
We that's one of the things that I'm liking. The other thing that I like to do, I haven't put all of them on there, but I have the user's manuals for certain things on my iPad. So, like a couple weeks ago, I was changing some settings on my stereo. Couldn't remember where exactly the setting was.
Yeah.
Didn't have to go back and download it again because I've got it stored away there. I've got just manuals for a few things that I've looked up on the internet. Had trouble finding the manual, so once I did, I save it as a PDF and have it either on the computer or on the iPad, so I can look at it as I'm trying to solve whatever problem is coming up.
Yeah. No, I whenever I buy something new, especially if I'm going to carry it on the road, I will look for the manual online and download it into either iBooks or Goodreader.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm on the road and I have my little portable router that I need to use at this hotel, the guidebook is there and I can just look it up. Oh, it's amazing how convenient this can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think that is like you said. We were having some work done on the car a while back, and that's what I was doing is trying to. And I've learned to kind of save the stuff to the iPad as opposed to trying to go to it online, because so many times the signal is weak, or they've got the network locked down, and you're getting bad signal. I was sitting in one place halfway freezing one day as they were working on the car, and getting an internet signal was kind of a pain because you were basically sitting in a something that wasn't much more than a metal Quonset hut, So from a signal standpoint, you were out in no man's land. Yeah.
Well, we own Camrys, and the Toyota dealership here is huge, and they have a very special waiting area where they have free coffee and drinks and machines, and they have free Wi-Fi right in the room, so you can check your email even. So,
and I noticed
it's not that bad to sit there for 3 hours if you've got an iPad, music on the iPad, and some headphones with Bluetooth headphones. So I just put those on and read my books and drink my free coffee, and 3 hours went by.
I noticed that some of the places here are doing that. Some of them are a little more ahead of the game than others. But that's turning out to be a nice addition. And now, I mean, even like you said, with the size of some of the phones, you almost don't need to carry the iPad. Just look it up on the phone.
I think that iPhone 6 Plus would be a nice nice device for replacing several others. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got that's probably I got a warning from my carrier the other day, basically saying all of our phones and devices are eligible for upgrade. The biggest question for us will be, are we going to switch carriers when we change, because we're having some signal issues that we really shouldn't be having, and it's consistent enough to be annoying. You know. So I don't know what we're going to do or when we're going to do that. But I figure it's coming. I keep I keep waiting for her 3GS to die, which would give us a good excuse to get new phones. But it just the thing just refuses to quit. It won't. Every time I think, oh good, she'll say, oh, the battery doesn't seem to be charging, and I'm thinking, oh good, it's going to die. And so we'll put it on the charger and let it completely charge, and then it goes right back to behaving itself. You know, yeah. I'll reboot the phone and charge it up, and next thing I know, it's behaving itself again. You know.
You never know.
I suggested putting it in the path of a car, but she didn't think that that was a good idea. I don't know why. You know.
Boy, it's 9:30 here.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I was going to say I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to have to call it an evening here, Dave.
I agree with you. I have to go help my wife with a few things too.
Oh yeah, there's always the honeydew.
She's got a new universal remote for the bedroom and can't figure out how to switch between her cable and her DVD.
Oh, okay.
And I just got her a new Blu-ray player for the bedroom, and she wants to watch something, so I have to go figure that out.
There you go.
Can I put the TV behind the car?
Well, hey, we could put both behind the car. She wants to put our old TiVo unit behind the car, which never quite worked in a way that she was happy with. And I'm convinced that at some point, you know, I have to try to explain how I have the stereo and all the gear wired together. Not that there's that much of it. It's just that over the years, it's been wired 2 or 3 different ways as we've, you know, replaced one thing, and
of course,
this has got a different set of connectors than the other one did.
I understand.
So, yeah.
Okay, well,
I've enjoyed it, Dave.
Good talking to you, Sly.
And hopefully we'll see you next week. Unless you're off spreading some Christmas cheer. And
I don't know. We always, on Sunday, we always decide whether to see a movie and then go out to dinner. So we never know. We play it by ear.
Well, that's what we'll do. And I'll start looking around and see what I can find for next week. And until then, it's been good having you.
Okay, well, thanks.
You're welcome.
Talk to you later.
All righty. And guys, that's going to do it for this week's Mac Forum video chat. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been good to have Dave with us this evening. As I said, I'm going to post the link to those 2 threads with the tips that we were talking about. And if you didn't see them last week, take a look at the thread about using QuickTime 7 if you're not pleased with the way QuickTime 10 behaves. And until next week, this has been your host, Sly Dude, and I'll see you on the next Mac Forum Sunday video chat.